BBC Two now. Newsnight with Jeremy Paxman.
The Chancellor gives public sector workers the lowest pay rise of the last 10 years. Is this the bust following the boom? Tonight, at the most politically charged point in his cabinet career, Gordon Brown decides on a pay award which outrages trades unions. If it isn't a political gesture, what does it tell us about how he's running the economy? As primary school children across England learn where they'll be going next, is it time to admit that apparent choice isn't choice at all? We talked to the American general overseeing the surge of troops in Iraq. Is Iran trying to scupper his plan?
And it is the image they tried to ban. Later in the programme, I'll unveil our version of the picture that some claim compromises David Cameron. We've also got another that might embarrass the Prime Minister.
The trades unions are cross. That much was predictable and doubtless predicted. But what does the level of public sector pay awards announced today, 1.9% for nurses, for example, tell us about how Gordon Brown is managing the economy? He wants union endorsement if he's to become Prime Minister, so why is he riling them? Could it be that he doesn't have much of a choice? In a moment, I'll be talking to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury. First, though, Paul Mason reports.
If your job is fighting, there's been some good news today. The lowest paid frontline soldiers got a 9% pay increase. Nurses got 1.9%, and even that will be staged. Family doctors will get 0. If it all seems calculated to send a message more political than economic, that's because it is.
The overall awards come within the inflation target at 1.9%, demonstrating our total determination to maintain discipline and stability and to continue with an 11th year of sustained economic growth.
At London's St Thomas's Hospital tonight, within groaning distance of Mr Brown, those coming off shift did not seem happy.
I actually saw it this afternoon. I don't think that's very good for us anyway, because as you can see, we've worked quite hard in the last year or so. So I'm quite disappointed in that.
What do you do here?
I'm a pharmacist.
And 1.5% feels to you?
Not a lot.
We're just gauging reaction to the pay award, 1.5% for health workers.
An insult.
What do you think, 1.5% the pay rise?
We'd like more.
We'd like more. What's the chances of getting more?
None.
Headline inflation is 2.7% and has been rising. The retail price index, which many see as a better guide to family spending pressures, is up 4.2%. But compared to both these benchmarks, public sector settlements today fell short. Senior civil servants will get 1.4%, nurses effectively 1.9%, judges 2.4%, prison officers 2.5%, and the military overall 3.3%. Health unions were furious because the pay review body recommendations had been for the full 2.5%.
Our members understand that the Labour Party has put in and the Labour government have put in a record amount of money into the NHS. There have been considerable improvements. So you weigh one up against the other. What they cannot understand is why an independent review, which was supposed to keep politics out of it, has been countermanded in this sense. And that's the point we wish to make. Leave it to the review.
The NHS pay review contains a rare public sideswipe at the government. It says, "We have faced difficulties in obtaining sufficiently robust, up-to-date information in a number of crucial evidential areas, particularly past and current earnings, the morale of the workforce, and the relationship between affordability, departmental expenditure limits, and the tariff uplift in England. We strongly urge the departments for our next review to ensure better explanations of projected earnings growth." In short, the scale and pace of financial reform in the NHS effectively blinded the body meant to set wages there. Even the process of awarding the increase was, well, fraught.
The government have behaved very, very strangely today. Over the last 24 hours, I've been advised that the pay review body evidence is on, the pay review body evidence is off. At 8 o'clock this morning, I was told it's definitely not going ahead. At 11 o'clock this morning, I was told it definitely is. Now, That breaches all the disciplines, processes and procedures that we're used to. We haven't really had a chance to properly digest the pay review body's report. That's no way to treat partners in the trade union partners, and it's no way to treat their staff.
Does it suggest to you, ever so slightly, that the DOH isn't the guiding hand behind all this?
What it suggests to us is that the Treasury has got its footprints all over this, that the Department of Health themselves probably didn't know what was going to happen today.
This pay award helps Gordon Brown fight his twin demons: inflation above target and a predicted £20 billion gap in the public finances. Previous public sector pay awards have arguably fueled both. Here at the Treasury, they've got no problem with having Gordon Brown's fingerprints found all over this. In the first place, it protects him against any Tory charge of being soft on the unions. On top of that, it's a cabinet decision, so it ties the hands of all but one of the deputy leadership candidates. And for the unions, it says to them, you may want Gordon as your leader, but you'll have him on his terms.
We have to wait and see what's going to happen in terms of the head of the Treasury and the future leader of this government. That's a bit of a mystery, but we're not very happy with this conduct and this behaviour at the moment.
With civil servants preparing for a May Day strike and council workers expecting a similar slap in the face, I've learned tonight that union leaders are, behind the scenes, discussing coordinated industrial action.
Spoke to the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Stephen Timms. I wanted to know whether this was the bust after the boom.
No, this is a good and fair settlement for staff, rewarding them well. Nurses, for example, seeing an average increase next year, allowing for the progression up the pay scale of 4.4%, which is above the average level of pay settlements in the economy. But it's also consistent with our 2% inflation target. So it's good for staff and it's good for the economy as well.
But you're giving them less than the pay review body recommended, correct?
Well, by November, we will have implemented the pay review body recommendations in full, but we are staging the awards. We have done on occasion in the past.
The consequence of which is that instead of being 2.5%, it'll be 1.9%.
The basic award will be 1.9%, but on top of that, there is progression up the pay scale.
You could have awarded them more than that, presumably, couldn't you?
Well, we wanted a settlement that was not only fair to staff, but was also right for the economy and consistent in particular with the inflation target. And the Bank of England a couple of months ago was warning about the risks to the economy from inflationary pay rises. So we've consistently said we wanted a settlement that was consistent with the 2% target, and that's what this settlement achieves.
And you consider a salary of £19,600 for a nurse, qualified, medium grade, you consider that adequate, do you?
Well, what I can say is that the recruitment position on nurses is good.
I'm asking you whether you think it's an adequate salary.
I think it's a fair settlement.
Fine. Although you accept that as it is below the rate of inflation over which you preside, they will effectively be worse off.
No. If you allow for progression up the scale, the average rise for a nurse is 4.4%, which is not only
Hang on, you've just
above
told me
inflation.
You've just told me it's 1.9%.
The basic award comes out at 1.9%,
yes.
But plus progression.
And can you tell me what the basic rate of inflation is?
Well, let me just finish my point. In addition to the basic award, nurses also progress up their pay scale each year. And if
but you're not comparing like with like then, are you?
No, I am. I am comparing like with like. If you add those two elements together, it comes in at 4.4%, which is above the average rate of pay settlements across the economy, as well as being well above inflation.
Isn't the fact of the matter that you wouldn't be in this predicament of having to impose pay rises lower than those recommended by the independent pay review body had you not got into such a mess with inflation?
No, I don't agree with that. The inflation has stayed within the 1% band around the target as we aim for it
So you're on
to do.
target now, are you? Saying you're on target?
We're within the 1% band around the 2% target. At the moment, inflation is at 2.7%. It came down
last month. It should be about 2, shouldn't it?
The target is 2. And we're heading back towards target. And it's very important from our point of view and from the economy's point of view that we keep on track towards the target, and this settlement will help us do that.
Had you not given such, by your terms, generous awards in the past, you wouldn't find yourself having to give such a niggardly award this time, would you?
Well, it was necessary to improve the pay of public sector staff in the past, not least to deal with the serious problems of recruitment that we had, particularly for nurses and others in the health service, and with retention. We've resolved those problems now. We've got 85,000 more nurses compared with 10 years ago. What we needed in this settlement was a settlement that's fair to staff and also right for the economy.
Yes, so nurses are paying the price of your mismanagement or slack handling of the economy.
No, nurses have benefited from a real terms pay rise of 30% over the last 10 years. Absolutely right that they should have that, and that's helped us to remove the problems of nurse recruitment that we suffered from in the past. The decision for this settlement was what was right for the year ahead.
If the trade unions object to these proposals, will you impose them or will you negotiate?
Well, there is a procedure that we will go through, but I hope that when staff look at the details of this settlement and see what it actually means in terms of their pay next year, they will recognise that it is a fair settlement. And that's certainly my view, that it's fair to staff as well as being right for the economy and right for the services as well.
But you are willing to negotiate then?
There's a procedure which, of course, we will observe.
So you will negotiate?
The procedure will run its course.
Stephen Timms, thank you. Tomorrow, if they didn't learn it today, is the day 600,000 children in England will discover where they're going to spend the next several years of their lives. How many will get to the school they or their parents want, we can't say, because the Department for Education and Skills says it doesn't keep proper records. But we can be sure there will be a large number who will be disappointed, which rather raises the question of whether choice exists at all. Tim Hewell has been following the progress of a number of children.
On one side, the system. On the other, parents. Who's really in charge? Last year, Newsnight followed the families of children from one South London primary through the labyrinth of visits, tests, consultations and form filling that make up the secondary school admissions process. They were told they were choosing, but the results weren't what most wanted. This was part of the class of 2006 at Clapham Manor, a close-knit group together for 7 years. Now it's torn apart. The 55 leavers from Clapham Manor are dispersed between 20 different secondaries across London, all but 2 in the state sector. Many have ended up at their second, third or even fourth choice school. Some are at ones they never originally applied for at all. Last year, Jake Bertram Kennedy was hoping to get into his local academy, but he lived 43 metres beyond its catchment area, and he didn't get into any of the other schools he wanted either. The result? He has to travel at least an hour every morning to reach Elliott School, a mixed comprehensive in Putney, which eventually offered him a place. That means leaving home soon after 7 o'clock and catching 2 or even 3 buses. And in a part of London where a 15-year-old was shot recently and 11-year-olds can get mugged, such a long journey can feel scary. When Jake meets up with old friends from Clapham Manor, the danger on buses and streets is one of the first things they talk about.
Sometimes kids from other schools ask me if I have any money or a phone, and I just say no.
And what do they do then?
Oh, they say, oh, all right, and then they say, what about your friend? And I said, oh, I don't know.
Their parents, who've got together in another room, are more worried about the distance their children have to travel than almost anything else.
Well, I didn't get a choice, and my son didn't get a choice. If I could choose, I would choose differently, yeah, which would be for my son to go to a local school. Children can't engage in education if they're being threatened on streets, if their physical safety is in jeopardy.
Liam Witchell's the only child here who got into his first choice school. He's been travelling to Dunraven, an oversubscribed school, sought after by many, but he's not happy there.
It's kind of weird that when you think about the results are so good and it's one of the top schools in Lambeth. Socially wise, it's not a great school, but academic wise it is.
But his father accepts a closer school may be better for Liam than a distant one with good results.
The thing that I'm not happy about is that there was no sort of continuity from the junior school to a local high school. I mean, it would have been great if he could have gone to the school that's, you know, a few hundred metres down the road. The other parents know him. People around here know each other. If I see one of the kids in trouble, you know, I will intervene, other parents will intervene.
Exactly a year ago, when Rowan Tavel excitedly tore open her offers letter, she found the name of her third choice school. She accepted the place at Chestnut Grove, a specialist school where she'd had to pass a test to prove her aptitude in languages. Now she's got used to the formal atmosphere of secondary school, she seems to be enjoying herself.
Well, I'd looked around before, but I think I was slightly worried. I always knew there was going to be something that went wrong. But it was nice, and it was a lot more impressive than I thought it would be. The subjects and stuff are really fun, and today I had PE, and that was fun. We did football, and in science today we dissected a heart of a sheep. I'm a bit squeamish, but you know, I touched it.
But is Rowan better off at a specialist school than at one she wouldn't have to travel to? Her mother's not sure.
When I looked at secondary schools, one of the important things was the quality of teaching and the levels of achievement within that school. But running parallel with that was also how safe was she going to be getting there, and how was she going to travel there, who was she going to go with, and not really friends, but was she going to be with someone so that she would be safe. But as she's gone to secondary school, that's become even more important.
Over the next few days, another group of Clapham parents will gather around these gates to compare offers. Many are likely to be as frustrated as those who went through the process last year. Parents who say they accepted the schools where their children were placed, largely because they had no real alternative. But one family fought on and on until they got somewhere they were really satisfied with. Diane Brown and her grandson Luke were taken on a special tour of the school where they'd been offered a place, Lillian Bayliss, their fourth choice. The headmaster, Gary Phillips, was determined to convince them how successful he'd been at improving discipline and results at a school once said to be the worst performing in the country, and he seemed to have succeeded.
Absolutely, I'm very, very impressed.
But in the end, Luke's gone to a very different establishment just across the road, Archbishop Tennyson, an all-boys Church of England school, where he got a place after a successful appeal at the beginning of September, after the school year had already started. His grandmother was partly persuaded by the results. At Archbishop Tennyson, 49% got 5 A to C GCSE passes, including English and Maths last year. Lillian Bayliss managed only 11%, although its value-added score is very high. So what's good about this school?
Teachers, people, and you feel safe, kind of, and the lessons.
Diane believes she's now got the absolute best for Luke, but as a non-church attender, it was hard to swing it.
We have a real sad lack of secondary schools. There aren't enough to go around. So many children will not have a school at the end of this week, and they're going to be very, very disappointed. Their parents are going to be worried. Not good enough.
Choosing a future for a child should involve excitement, even inspiration. For most in this part of Britain, and many others, it's mainly a time of deep anxiety. Real choice for parents still seems a distant prospect.
So does choice exist? Here to discuss that is the Schools Minister Jim Knight, the Shadow Education Secretary David Willits. Over here we have some of those affected by these politicians. Martin Powell's a Brighton parent who worked with the council on their new admissions policy, though he disagrees with some of it. Professor Anne West has studied admission procedures, and Gary Phillips is a head teacher at Lillian Bayliss. That's one of the schools featured in that report. Jim Knight, do you know how many children aren't going to get their first choice this year?
We don't know for this year, but we do know on the last survey that we did that 96% of parents got a school that they had chosen, 85% got their first choice.
How long ago was that survey?
That survey was in 2002, but we have got some 2005 data from Manchester, from Derbyshire, which confirms that that still is roughly
90-something percent.
96% get a school that they've chosen, 85% get their first choice. In Lambeth, the borough that you featured, I think last year 85% got a school that they'd chosen. It will be 90% this year, according to Lambeth.
So your argument is that choice is working?
Choice is broadly working, but choice needs some intervention to make it fairer. That's why we've produced the admissions code. Unfettered choice just favours the middle class and
just be clear,
removes choice for the working class.
96% get their first choice?
No, 96% get a school they've chosen, one of their top 3 preference.
Yeah.
85%.
My question was how many get their first choice?
Yes, and I then said 85% get their first choice.
That was how long ago? That was in Sheffield, wasn't it?
No, that was a national survey we did from 2002, but we've confirmed that with figures in 2005.
David Willits, do you think that choice is working?
I think that there are still unhappy parents who don't get to the school of their choice, and I think politicians of all parties have raised expectations and then failed to deliver.
Including you?
I think that all of us have taught the language of choice, and then the parent comes to the surgery and says, I chose this school for my son or daughter and I can't get him or her in, and we suddenly say, well, it wasn't really choice, but you've been able to express a preference, and that isn't good enough, and the only real way you can tackle it is to have more good school places in total.
Well, that's a slightly... no one then would want to go anywhere other than the most convenient school, presumably. Is that right?
Well, certainly, as
we
saw in your report, one of the things that matters to a school is its local community, and being close to the school is one of the main concerns that the parents had. So that is certainly it's a very important criterion, but parents may have other tests.
Well. Gary, as a head teacher, does it feel that parents have choice?
For my parents, it feels they have choice. We're oversubscribed now. They've chosen us. We choose them by the distance they live from us, and we try to help create a cohesive community. But parents are confused by the bewildering array of admissions arrangements. There's deep suspicion as to how many selective schools run their admissions procedures. So that feeling of choice trickles away when they have to navigate very complicated procedures which do, as the Minister said, favour the middle classes, and they favour the articulate parents who know the system.
And as a head teacher, if you are oversubscribed, how do you decide?
We start with siblings, we start with special needs students, we start with looked after children students, the most needy in our community, and then we do it very simply by geographical distance. And we feel comfortable with that because we live in a relatively socially mixed area, so we collect from across the range.
As a parent, does it feel as if you've got real choice?
Certainly not in Brighton and Hove, where we only have 2 schools that are oversubscribed. And basically, choice is a complete myth because we have no surplus capacity in the city whatsoever. Every place has to be filled by a child. And if you have only 2 schools that are very popular, what that means is if one child walks in the front door, another one has to be booted out the back in order to make space for them in any given year, which means that there's a fixed number of parents who can effectively express that choice. Everyone else gets one of the other schools. So, no, it doesn't feel like there's choice for most parents in Brighton and Hove.
And does that matter to you?
I think my stance on this, I'd have to agree with David Willits that really what we need is all schools raising up to a reasonable standard.
Sure, but people would still express a preference even if it was only on the basis of the architecture or something.
Well, yes, but ultimately they're not going to be very upset if they end up in a school with slightly down-market architecture compared with others. What they'd be upset about is if they end up in a school where they don't feel their child will do well. And what most parents want is to be able to walk to their local school if that's at all possible.
And Wes, what's your reading of how choice is working or not?
Well, I think for some parents it's clearly working. Some parents can navigate the system. Some parents, they've got children who are likely to get admitted to schools that have got selective admissions criteria of one sort or another. So I think for some parents it's working pretty well. Probably quite stressful for them nevertheless, but there are other parents who have much greater difficulty.
Do you think as a philosophy it makes sense?
To
give parents and children a choice of which school they go to?
I think given the current situation with the types of schools that are available, I think there's probably no option because, for example, some parents would not want a faith school for their child. They would not want a single-sex school for their child. So given you've actually got a situation as it is at present, probably you have to allow parents to have some preference. But I think if I was starting from scratch, I would go for the Finnish type system or a Scottish type system.
You've got the Minister here. What advice would you give him?
what advice would I give him?
Yes, tell him how to sort it out.
I think the main thing I would do is to say, well, don't let those schools that are responsible for their own admissions carry out the admissions process themselves. Make sure that all schools have a criteria that are objective, clear and fair. If they're objective, clear and fair, then why not get another body to actually administer that
Why do you let schools get away with this? Why particularly faith schools?
Why particularly faith schools?
Yeah. Why do you let them get away with operating these selection processes?
Well, we've just introduced a new admissions code that's going to apply for the first time that makes it fair. I think Anne would agree that it's a significant improvement. It was supported by the Conservatives as well in Parliament. We all agreed it was a much more fair and transparent system. Did away with a lot of backdoor selection techniques. We were working off some of the advice that we previously got from Anne around things like the way interviews works, the way some schools are trying to find out what sort of income parents might have so they can fundraise better from them. Even the use of school uniform to try and price some parents out of the market. All of those sorts of practice we have been doing away with.
You support
the
the government on this?
Yeah, I want to see parents choosing schools, not schools choosing parents. So I think there's nothing wrong with parental choice. I think the problem is that the system doesn't then respond to the parental choice. The problem is that in places like Brighton, the tragedy is there are only 2 schools there, apparently, the secondary schools, which are oversubscribed. The question is, what can we do to raise the standards in the other 3 or 4 secondary schools in Brighton so that parents don't think there's only 2 options for their child? Because as soon as you've got 2 that are oversubscribed, it doesn't matter what your rules are, you're going to have a lot of unhappy parents.
OK, you brought up the Brighton example. The particular mechanism that they're talking about there is a lottery. Does that appeal to you as a Brighton parent?
I'll tell you the problem that's happened in Brighton is that our starting point on the admissions group was to try and come up with balanced intakes for all schools. That's one of the ways to make sure that all schools ended up much closer in terms of their popularity. But that isn't what we've ended up with. We didn't end up with the fairest system, and this does relate to the lottery. And that happened because of effectively gerrymandering by the Green and Labour councillors, if that's maybe a bit strong word for it, where rather than trying to end up with fair intakes, what they did was favour specific marginal wards and made sure that they ended up in the catchments of the most popular schools. And I actually was told this by one of the Green councillors, that this area had to be in the favoured catchment. 2 Labour councillors, including their education spokesperson, told me that they had that this was about delivering seats in the election.
Well, they're not here to put their side of the story, but the principle. You support the lottery principle, don't you?
We've offered it as an option.
And so did you not?
No, I think that although there are individual schools that may choose to do it, I think the problem with it when you apply it across a local authority, as in Brighton, is that you weaken the link between the school and the local community.
So you've told any Conservative local authorities they mustn't do it, have you?
We have certainly, in conversations with the Conservatives...
Have you or have you told them or not?
I am not given instructions to Tory Council. It wouldn't be right to do it, but I do know in conversations with the Conservatives in Brighton Council that they didn't agree with having a lottery as a system across a whole local authority. And I think schools should have links to the local community, and as soon as you have a lottery, what about siblings? What about people who are living very close to the school, which we saw in your programme, in the report, was important?
Have you thought about a lottery in your school?
It's a nice solution in one level, but it's not. You can't come up with a system whereby children who live very close to a school are not guaranteed a place in a school. I can understand...
Why not?
Because I believe, and my governors believe, and I think most people in education believe, in schools having a vital role in terms of social cohesion. And we only have to look at the rising youth-on-youth crime and then track it back to selection and track it back to some of those things that we saw in the report. You know, if you grow up in a community, if you're educated with a community, you're supportive of it. We now have quite divisive communities in terms of our young people, and that division can be tracked right back to 11 when they're no longer educated.
And it is possible. The real challenge is not to try to design a perfect admission system. There isn't one. It is possible, even in our tough communities, to create more good schools. I admire what you're doing at your school. I admire what the government is doing with academies based on CTCs. The only real way forward out of this, and it is not rocket science, is to have better discipline, to have strong discipline policies, to have school uniforms, to have streaming in settings starting early when the kids start...
In all schools, you mean?
And then you start raising standards and you can have more good schools. It is not written in Holy Writ that in Brighton there are only 2 out of 6 secondary schools should be any good. It doesn't have to be like that. We don't have to
as if you're sucking on a lemon. I mean, is he talking sense or not?
I think he is talking sense, broadly, yes. I mean, because one does want... I don't know, I'd necessarily go for exactly what Dave's arguing for, but I think in general terms, yes. I think one does want to have more good schools, and that is going to require good leadership. It's going to require a good school mix as well, because that's quite important. It makes it easier to teach. It means that you're going to get good teachers who are going to apply to stay at those schools.
This is pretty long-term stuff, though, isn't it? I mean, this could take ages to achieve.
And Jeremy, don't forget, I mean, we are seeing steady improvement in schools, and this use of a lottery is oversubscription criteria. It's sort of after extra time, it's the penalty shootout.
I'm kind of moving on from the lottery to the broader question now. Go on.
I have to say the problem with the lottery in Brighton is that it's only fair if you've actually got socially mixed catchments for it to work from. Otherwise, you're just shuffling middle-class kids in and out again. It's just another way of doing that. And in Brighton, we haven't got that. We've got 2 schools on the edge of the city that have been dumped with incredibly high levels of free school meals, and they are going to really suffer. The governors have told me they face it ending up in special measures as a result of this. And that's the problem, is you've ended up with political manipulation that means that no matter how good your admissions system is, if the councillors in your area aren't willing to end up with a fair system, they will shape it to favour their marginal wards.
You wanted to make a quick point.
Yeah, I think I want to go back, and there is a very important point which is missed here, which is the definition of a good school. And the definition of a good school has been led by league tables on 5 A to C's. There is no consideration of the value added, the progress made. Some of our so-called good schools...
They just reconfigured the whole way you assess schools, haven't you?
Yes, but not the way parents perceive what a good school is, Jeremy. When you look at the league tables, parents' definition is that. There is also going on what is often called the white elephant in the room, which is covert racism. Parents in some communities do not want their children to go to schools which are mainly made up of children from black and minority ethnic communities.
Have you got any way of addressing that point?
Well, that final point, well, if there is covert racism, anything that is covert can be quite difficult to tackle, but it's something that we do take seriously. You look at exclusion statistics, for example, and there is a much greater likelihood of you being excluded if you're from an Afro-Caribbean or a mixed-race Afro-Caribbean background. We do need to address that. We need to recruit more teachers, and there's a whole debate to be had.
We're going to shortchange this particular area if we try to deal with it in the remaining few seconds we've got. Have you got any final contribution you'd like to make on this stage?
Yeah, I would just say that even in the toughest areas where it is difficult, there are some beacons of really excellent schools. It can be done with powerful heads, with strong backing, with a strong academic curriculum. It can be done. We've all been to schools like that, and we just need to do everything possible to have more schools like that so we have fewer dilemmas such as one they've got in Brighton.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. Now, coming up on the programme.
In a couple of minutes, the image they wanted to ban. I'll be unveiling this picture of David Cameron.
But first, a roundup of today's news. Our main story tonight: government departments have given details of this year's pay settlement for public sector workers, which is the lowest for a decade. The Chancellor, Gordon Brown, has set the awards within the government's inflation target of 2%. But speaking earlier on the programme, the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Stephen Timms, refused to rule out negotiating these pay deals.
The procedure which, of course, we will observe.
So you will negotiate?
The procedure will run its course.
Trading standards officers are still trying to find out if thousands of car breakdowns were caused by contaminated petrol. The fuel in the affected cars has been traced to a storage depot in the Thames estuary, but so far tests have drawn a blank. A source at the AA Motoring Organisation says traces of silicon have been found in some of the petrol it's removed from cars. A millionaire businesswoman has been jailed for 8 years for plotting to have her former lover and his new wife killed by a hitman. Carol Ann Hunter offered to pay £10,000 for the contract killings, but she was caught in an undercover police operation. Her new boyfriend, Anton Lee, was jailed for 4 years by a judge at the Old Bailey for soliciting murder. It was another turbulent day on the markets. The FTSE 100 share index was down 55 points. In New York, the Dow Jones was also down 34 against the euro. The pound was up a little against the dollar. The pound was down a bit. President Bush's strategy for getting Iraq under control to put in another 20,000 troops in hope of a dramatic turnaround had a shadow cast over it today. The Democrats, who control the Senate, are thinking about cutting the money allocated for military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan next year by some $20 billion. The White House is under pressure. Money is critical, of course, but so is the reliability of the Iraqi authorities. So when Mark Urban went to see General Jack Keane, who's one of the chief architects of the so-called surge strategy, he asked him directly whether the Iraqi Prime Minister could be trusted to behave impartially.
Yeah, Maliki is an open question in terms of, does he truly want a representative democracy that enfranchises the Sunnis? And I think we've always had some concern about that, if we're honest with ourselves, and we should be. But as it pertains to this operation, his actions are actually matching his rhetoric. His Iraqi security forces have shown up in the numbers required at the time they were required. He's put in charge a very effective general in charge of the Baghdad security plan by the name of Lieutenant General Aboud. And he's saying all the right things, that is Maliki. He's saying, I want to protect Shias and Sunnis, and I'm going to be even-handed with them, and he intends for his forces to be. It remains to be seen if that is carried out. But right now, the rhetoric is very supportive of what we're trying to do.
Now, there have been some signs that some of the Shiite militants, the Mehdi army, for example, are trying to avoid confronting American troops in Baghdad. But aren't they just waiting you out, knowing that after a few months this will be over?
I think the strategy is mostly defensive. We went in there and killed 5 or 6 of their leaders and captured some others, and they certainly know that this military operation has taken place. I believe their decision is a strategic one to wait out and see what develops. But in my mind, that's good.
How helpful was it to you in trying to push forward the military measures on the ground when your own defense secretary suggested that this surge wouldn't go on beyond the end of this year?
In my own mind, this operation will last through probably most of 07 to secure Baghdad itself. And it's not just a matter of bringing down the violence, it's also a matter of changing the people's attitudes and their behavior, because they've been operating in a secure environment for months, and they're now receiving some economic assistance. As a result of that, they become connected to their local leaders. They're providing us with significantly more information in terms of who the militia death squads are, the insurgents, as well as the Al-Qaeda. And they begin to isolate the thugs and killers that are in their midst, not us. That you cannot do overnight.
A lot of people, when they hear these accusations that Iran is providing bomb technology or members of the Revolutionary Guards are active in Iraq, think that the US is trying to pave the way for bombing of Iran. Do you detect that?
Well, there's no doubt that the Iranians are aiding and abetting the Shia militia and trying to create a situation where the United States fails. We're attempting to kill and capture those who are doing it and push them back across the border and stop it. I believe we're doing some things quietly, diplomatically with them, and I don't detect any policy that would involve us in a direct action against Iran that would lead to a major conflict.
Do you think the new diplomatic initiative, this idea of having a so-called contact group involving all of Iraq's neighbours, including Iran and Syria, in talks, is going to be helpful to you on the military side in the coming months?
When it comes to Syria and Iran, I mean, we have to be clear-eyed about who they are and what they have been doing. And I don't believe that anything the Maliki government's going to do is going to stop them from their meddling, so to speak. I think it's going to take more action diplomatically than that to get them to stop in terms of adverse actions that would impact on their governments and on their countries. But I think, yeah, I think it's a good effort, and it's something that we probably should have done a while ago, and the fact that Maliki wants to do it and bring his neighbors to the table to discuss Iraq's problems and what their mutual interests are makes a lot of sense to me.
And now the pictures they don't want you to see. We all do stupid things when young, but you really don't want to remind people of them when you're trying to strut the stage as a statesman. In a moment, we shall see a young Tony Blair doing something rather rude, or appearing to do so. But first, we wanted to find out what had happened to that entertaining picture which appeared in the press a fortnight ago, showing the young David Cameron posed with other members of Oxford's snootiest dining club. Our investigator was Michael Crick.
For the past 3 days, I've been pursuing the mysterious case of the disappearing picture. A picture involving the leader of the opposition and an elitist and extravagant university dining club which enjoys a reputation for student hijinks well beyond the usual. This is the back entrance to Christ Church College in Oxford. Now, 21 years ago, just round this corner, was taken what's likely to be one of the most controversial photographs in British politics. It was first published in the Mail on Sunday 2 weeks ago, and it shows the young David Cameron as part of what's called the Bullingdon Club. Now, I'd love to be able to show you this photograph again, and it appeared in many national newspapers, but unfortunately, in the last few days, for some strange reason, the copyright on the photograph has been withdrawn by the Oxford photographic agency Gilman & Soame, who took it all those years ago. Gilman & Soame, based at this drab site near the station, are an Oxford institution, taking pictures for local schools and university colleges, sports teams and clubs. But why their sudden ban on the Cameron-Bullingdon photo? The Tories deny they asked for it. It seems astonishing that you're turning away money for old rope, really. I mean, newspapers willing to pay you hundreds of pounds for using these photographs. You have to do very little. And you're saying, no thanks, we're not interested. I could only get through to their outside PR man. No one from the firm itself would talk. Now, I mean, you know, everybody's going to think that you've been nobbled by the Conservative Party. So, if Newsnight couldn't show the photo, why not get an Oxford artist to paint the same scene in oils, preserving it forever? In their wing collars, waistcoats and tails, in a carefully constructed group, Mr. Cameron and his public school chums, among them the young Boris Johnson, look like figures from Evelyn Waugh, oozing all the confidence, privilege and affluence of the English upper classes.
Well, it completely explodes Cameron's, in itself, very able pretense of not being a toff. This is palpably, I mean, you glance at that photograph and you see a lot of gilded youths, plutocrats, people who can afford £1,000 for a special uniform and £400 a time for dinner, all having this sort of hooray Henry existence.
I think it tells us something about David Cameron that he doesn't much want everyone to know, that he's not the ordinary bloke that he claims to be, that he's actually much grander and much more aristocratic than he's made out.
So it's in his interest, really, for the photograph not to have wide circulation.
Well, I think Roy Hattersley said that the photograph itself was far more damaging to Cameron and the new Tories than the allegations of drug use which were published at the same time.
The Labour Party had thought of using the Bullingdon photo on election posters. The Men-Only Club is one of Oxford's most notorious student societies, having left a trail over the years of destruction and vomit, though there's no evidence that either Cameron or Johnson indulged in its worst excesses.
I don't think an evening often ended without the restaurant being trashed and the damage then being paid for in full, very often in cash. And certainly, you know, a night in the cells would be regarded as par for a Buller man, and so would debagging anyone who'd really in some way attracted the irritation of the Buller men as not being in some way a decent, upstanding member of the kind of society that they belong to.
The sort of activity that, if you came from a different background, might well qualify you from an ASBO.
Oh, of course, yes. No, these things are absolutely disastrous when everyone starts doing them. And if Liverpool fans sort of destroy an entire train or something, that's the breakdown of, you know, everything that society holds dear. But if 24 gilded youths from Oxford do it, then it's just a fine old English tradition.
Gilman & Soame refused to give Newsnight an interview, but a spokesman for the company has told us that following the publication of the Cameron photograph in the newspapers 2 weeks ago, the company made a policy decision. In future, they say, they're not going to release to the media any what they call school photographs. And as to the suggestion that they may have been nobbled by the Conservative Party, they insist that that's without foundation. And yet, on the street yesterday, they did release this school photo, unintentionally one presumes, blown from their open skip. Both the company and the Tories deny any contact between them, though Mr Cameron's office admitted today that when they heard of Labour's plans for posters, they did think of asking who owned the copyright on the picture, but never got round to it. Gilman & Soame, meanwhile, say their decision's purely commercial.
It's bizarre and mysterious and puzzling. And here they are, they own a picture which is in demand and for which they could make quite a lot of money, now and for the foreseeable future, as long as David Cameron is prominent, which could be quite a while, both at home and abroad.
and they're not taking advantage of it. It just seems very strange from a simple business point of view.
What sort of money could they make?
Well, I've heard that they've charged as much as £2,000 for use of this picture in the past.
Many politicians, of course, are haunted by photos from their pasts. Here's John Reid as a student leader when he didn't just have hair, but plenty of it. Here's an equally hairy Gordon Brown. And yesterday I went to Cheltenham College, of all places, to see an astonishing shot of the young Tony Blair, also in a drunken Oxford dining club, which I first saw when working for Newsnight back in 1994, but wasn't then allowed to film.
Anyway, it's excellent to see you again after all
Indeed
this
so.
time. 13 years, I think it was.
And we both appear to be doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, well.
The owner, Nicholas Loughton, did subsequently release the top half to the press. The much more embarrassing lower bit is shown publicly here for the first time.
I suppose the BBC lawyers would be a bit worried if I was to suggest he was drunk in that photo. On the other hand, it's probably more defamatory to say he's sober.
Michael is with us now in the studio, as indeed is the magnificent portrait. What's going to happen to the portrait?
Well, I suppose any members of the media who can't get hold of the photograph, they can ask the artist Rona if she'll let them have copies of the painting. But I mean, I think she's probably hoping that one of the wealthy individuals that are displayed there will make her a very generous offer for it.
Given the events up to now, they might well, I had thought.
Absolutely, keep the painting out of circulation.
Michael, thank you. Let's have a quick look at some of tomorrow morning's front pages. The Guardian, the public sector pay awards, The Independent, is the world economy heading for a crash? The Financial Times has the same story. Trading frenzy takes its toll on markets across the world. The Daily Mail hails judicial ruling against the compensation culture for somebody who tripped over a hole left by a maypole. The Times claims to have news of how road pricing is going to work. It's not going to be by individual journey, but apparently by zones. And The Sun has news of the better than average pay award to some of our troops. Well, that's all from Newsnight tonight, apart from to say we just wanted to point out to those sharp-eyed viewers who spotted this Welshman in last night's programme. Yes, our producer, Marion Jones, did realise what was written in Welsh on the man's T-shirt, but somehow he failed to tell Steve Smith, our truly English correspondent. I'm told the spelling error was also deliberate. I'm afraid if you don't speak Welsh, you'll just have to look it up. Happy St David's Day.